Okay, we're on. Debbie, will the clerk please call the roll?
You bet. Mark?
Here.
Jay?
Here.
Eric?
Here.
Jeff?
Here.
Nancy?
Yes.
Kurt?
Here.
Brandy?
Okay, we have Brandy, Assembly Member Morrell trying to Skype in, and we couldn't get the connection, so it's going to be 6 Assembly members today, 1 calling in, Member Walhuter, and the rest are in the room. It's now time for the voluntary Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, liberty and justice for all.
Okay. There are no minutes for approval today, so that brings us to item 4, which is amendment and approval of today's meeting agenda. I'd entertain a motion to approve or amend.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes.
I just have a short report on the local emergency planning committee's hazardous mitigation plan. Just
Okay,
a short report, and then I'll
We'll
have
add that under Borough discussion, or?
Sure, and then I just have a email.
Remind me when we get there, if you would, please.
I will. And then, Mr. Mayor, I have an email that I wanted to read under council discussion items.
On what?
Council discussion items.
Okay. So you make those notes, Debbie. Any other additions? Okay. All those in favor of carrying forward with the 2 amendments on today's agenda, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay, we have 2 amendments. There are no public hearings today. There are no bid awards today. So that brings us to visitors' views related to items on today's agenda. Anybody like to speak? Please come forward. Mr. Murgis, we'll kind of try to go in order.
This is related to.
These are views related to items on the agenda.
My name is John Burgess. I'm the owner of Island Ventures. Thank you for allowing me to speak. And I wanted to address the lease that you will be addressing later. And I have a letter here that I'd like to pass out to everybody from Reed Brothers.
Thanks, John. I'll pass them down.
It's pretty short, so I'll just quickly read it. Dear Mayor and Assembly members, Reed Brothers Construction has been working with John Murgis for several years on his desire to construct a rock boat ramp alongside the spit at the Scow Bay turnaround. We agree with John that the proposed ramp location has ideal geographic and geotechnical attributes for a rock surface boat ramp. We did all area test pit excavation for P&D engineering, which shows good substrata for the proposed boat ramp location. The wind and wave protection offered by the adjacent spit will definitely improve safety for large vessel launching and hauling. Over the decades, we have constructed many boat ramps throughout Southeast Alaska, large and small. We know the unique requirements for self-propelled hydraulic trailers. We know how to do the job right, and don't believe that there'll be any needs for additional engineering or design work is necessary. John Murgis's design is an improvement and will prove to be a durable and functional haul-out and launch ramp for years to come. Sincerely, Boston Reed Brothers. I also want to thank City Clerk, or Borough Clerk Thompson for getting this on the agenda today. There was quite a rush, and that's why there wasn't an opportunity for this letter to be given in time to be on the agenda. And that's all I have.
Thank you, Mr. Murgis. Mr. Zimke?
My name is Bob Zemke, and I'm representing myself. I'm here to talk once again to you about the restructuring of the power and light utility. Hopefully 3 to 5 minutes of your undivided attention is not too much to ask for. Reed Creating a utility director in place of hiring an electrical engineer/superintendent is an idea that many in the community are against. Since last week Friday, 272 signatures have been collected in a public appeal from concerned citizens asking this assembly to vote no on the ordinance changes during today's meeting and stating they are opposed to the utility director idea. In the last few months, there have been many highly educated people who presently are or have been involved in the electrical utility industry write letters and/or stand here and explain to this assembly why they feel the idea of replacing electrical superintendent with the utility director is a bad idea. Professionals in this industry, local electricians with 109 years of experience, another local electrician with 23 years, 5 of which he was a superintendent on a $100 to $300 million project, linemen with 67 years experience, electrical workers with 60 years, a past superintendent with 30 plus years, former SEPA representatives with 17 years, an IBW business manager with 15 years, a community member, former assemblyman, former SEPA board member who was very active in the building of the Tyee Hydro project that supplies our electricity, 35 plus years, a former mayor, former CEO of the Thomas Bay Power Authority Four Dam Pool, which is now SEPA, and also was the first CEO of SEPA, who was also instrumental in the building of the Tyee project, heading up that project development and the beginning of the intertie between Tyee, Swan Lake, and Ketchikan, 35 plus years, plus even the Wrangell superintendent with 21 years. Total experience in electrical industry, 412 years. How do you not listen to that many years of experience? It is always coming up at these meetings that you are trusting the advice of the borough manager. So why not trust the advice of 412 years of experienced professionals? Don't employers normally hire employees based on their qualifications? Why in this case are you promoting someone without the necessary qualifications for the job? It is public knowledge that the Public Works Director is in line for a utility director position you are trying to establish. This has never been about Mr. Hageman personally. Carl is without a doubt highly regarded, politically correct in his choice of words, does a good job as Public Works Director, budgeting, etc. That is not the point. This has never been about the work he performs. The fact of the matter is he lacks electrical background for what is considered an electrical superintendent. He would be splitting his time between 3 separate utilities when the electrical department is a full-time job all on its own. Does the U.S. Forest Service not have forestry engineers that lead their personnel? People with needed qualifications to get the job done. Do they put people out in the field without a leader with years of experience to guide them? Does mental health have trained professionals with years of experience to help people in need of their services, or do they hire anyone and train them as they go? Do the owners of multi-million-dollar fishing vessels put anyone in the captain chair without years of experience? Does someone who wanted to become a scuba diver get certified from an instructor-rated diver with years of experience, or would they just ask a friend or acquaintance with limited experience to teach them how to dive? The electric industry is no different than any of these. This assembly has said this idea is about saving money. Last week, during a radio call-in, it was said by a member of this assembly, quote, that he felt the utility director position would probably not save any money, but he wanted to try it anyway, close quote. So what will you do if this does not work? How will you know it is not working? Will you end up raising rates? Will you start over? How much will that end up costing the ratepayers? The position of an electric superintendent was already budgeted for by the ratepayers, as was the position of another lineman that was voted down last year. What if you lose key people that are critical to the workings of the department? What happens then? There is in effect OSHA guidelines that mandates a minimum amount of journeyman linemen necessary to perform hotline work. Even something like removing tree branches out of a minimum distance from energized conductors. Without that number of journeymen, the circuit would have to be de-energized to perform the work. Would you want your power off for however long it takes to perform any work when it could be done energized? The superintendent always had the final say in the majority of projects, not the employees. It is not their responsibility and not in their job descriptions. It has been said that consultants will always be required in the electrical environment. That is a true
Mr.
statement.
Zippy, could you please wrap it up? We're trying to keep it to 5 minutes.
I've got 2 more paragraphs, Mark. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So who will keep it has been said that consultants will always be required in an electrical environment. That is a true statement. So who will keep and check these consultants? Another consultant? There are snakes in every corner. Consultants are in the business to make money and bid their work accordingly. If you don't know what they are talking about, how will you know if what they are telling you is in our best interests? The utility director position you are wanting to create will not benefit the community. There needs to be someone who understands the nuances of power and energy, understands hydro and Federal Energy Regulatory Commission, as our small hydro is under FERC regulatory standards. The industry is too technical. Look for and hire an electrical engineer for the superintendent position. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Anybody else like to testify? I think Stan's up, and I'm gonna stop you in your testimony if you start getting, I don't know the correct word to use, if you're
No personal attack.
talking about somebody's, no personal attacks. You could mention line superintendent. My feeling today is different than the last meeting when I said don't mention names. Today on our agenda, an agenda item directly is giving potentially jobs to 2 people and they're named in the agenda. So I think you could touch on that. But if you get if you're being rude or being disrespectful to the person you're talking about, I will stop you and we'll start over or continue after that. So I don't know if I made much sense there, but I'm trying to be fair to everybody involved. Okay, please state your name and who you represent.
I'm Stan York, represent myself and most of my friends, I reckon. My experience, I started out in the service and in power. Now, I'm not an electrician. I don't claim to be. That I stayed away from. I worked with a power company in Juneau as a groundman, thinking I was going to be a lineman after I got out of the service. And I decided I did not want to be a lineman. They're far above me. Anyhow, I worked in engineering on the ferries for over 25 years, working myself up to first engineer, unlimited horsepower. I could have sailed any American ship anywhere in the world on the basis of that license. So that's who I am. In regard to reorganizing public works and power and light together, I have a few concerns and questions. Didn't the borough manager get a raise recently and now wants to save money by reorganizing? I don't know him personally. I'm sure he's a nice guy. I'm not calling any names. But I think I know where he could start if he wanted to save money by reorganizing. A long time, Public Works had maybe a nice guy and smile a lot, but that doesn't qualify him to be over power and light. The past heads of power and light did a good job, I'm told, and they left us in pretty good shape. We haven't had any major problems this year that I know of, but winter isn't over yet. What if towers were down or problems at Scow Bay, major, caused possibly by sunspots? Or at Tyee, the new guy would have to probably get major outside help because of his inexperience, and which would also be expensive. If reorganization is about money, it could be penny wise and dollar foolish in the long run to wait for the new guy to learn his job. In working on the ferries 25 years, I can tell you that when you have a major casualty, you don't have time for the new guy to learn his job. Believe me, there are always situations that can happen just waiting for the right times to occur. It could be extreme weather, fire, slides, tsunamis even, or solar storms, or any number of things. We need to have experience, ready to go, not the new guy that needs to learn. And as far as the money goes that was used, that the raise the borough manager got, I personally think it would have been better used to put it in the pot to put out the bid to get a new electrical qualified power and light superintendent. And anything else, I'm pretty much in agreement with Mr. Zimke, only he said everything I feel much more eloquently. Thank you very much for letting me speak.
Okay, thank you. Anybody else in the audience with views related to items on today's agenda? With Suzanne and then the gentleman behind her next. I'm trying to keep track of the time. 5 minutes is the maximum, so please state your name and who you represent.
Mr. Mayor and Assembly members, my name is Suzanne Wood. I am representing myself, a PM and PL ratepayer, and speaking to items 14C, 14H, and 15B. I recently had an exchange of emails with Assembly Member Jay Stanton Greger. I appreciated his response and would like to share in part some of that, including, quote, also, although we disagree here, I do like that Steve is thinking outside the box a bit here. Petersburg would not be pioneering if this passes. There are similar models being implemented in the lower 48. I'm not trying to argue it as a norm, just giving context. This was a major point that sold me on it, that it's being done successfully elsewhere, end quote. Today's agenda includes item 15B, which states, quote, with Assembly approval, Manager Giesbrecht will appoint Carl Hagerman to the position of Utility Director at an annual salary of $108,000, and Chris Cotta to the position of Public Works Director at an annual salary of $82,000, effective March 6, 2018. The Assistant Public Works Director position will be eliminated, end quote. As a PM and PL ratepayer, I request a pause in the Assembly's vote today on items 14C, 14H, and 15B, thus enabling the Borough Manager to convene a public meeting to identify the, quote, similar models being implemented in the lower 48, end quote, that contributed to Petersburg proposed electric department reorganization, detailing each facility, location, type of facility, infrastructure, and transmitting capacity, staff hierarchy, and pedigree. Are these standalone hydroelectric energy utilities? If so, how do they compare to SEPA's Ketchikan-Wrangell-Petersburg partnership, along with Petersburg Crystal Lake Blind Slough hydroelectric facility and diesel backup? Or are the lower 48 models multi-state smart grids that incorporate spot market purchasing and longer-term storage through commodity trading? Was SEPA's hydroelectric energy resource discussed with the lower 48 or non-SEPA Alaska hydroelectric facilities for comparison? Thank you for this opportunity to comment.
Thank you. The gentleman behind Ed there, could you please state your name and who you represent, please?
Yeah, my name is Mike Woodworth, and I'm here to represent myself, and I will try to be as short as possible, and I may not be able to shed any wisdom here that hasn't already been shed, but since I put in all my time and effort, I'll read what I wrote here. I'm here in opposing this reorganization idea myself. I don't know if any of you have ever been to the Grand Canyon, but if you have, you may have noticed the lack of fences or even signs telling you what you should or should not do while viewing the canyon from the edge. You are free to do as you wish, whether it is wise or not. One of the latest and unwise Texas men thought it would be funny to fake falling off the edge to scare his family, only to actually do so and fall to his death. Just because there's no fence or sign in this industry to keep you from trying to do what you are proposing to do doesn't make it a wise thing to do. I've heard you say you are doing this to save money, but things aren't adding up with me in this claim. He posted for superintendent 90 to 115 range or something like that, I guess. And after you didn't get anyone, we're back to this restructuring, paying Carl 108. Then Scott's supposedly going to be our tech guy, but his wage and other people's wages, I understand, are going to have to be moved up to an undetermined amount at this point. And then Scott can't even come close to filling Joe Nelson's shoes in the tech area. So you
I
say,
would recommend that you don't make pointed remarks like that, please.
okay, well, I'm trying not to, but okay, so try to leave. Okay, so you're going to hire consultants to fill the gap at yet more added unknown cost. And you will also be intentionally creating dissension in the workplace in this department, which is never good for productivity or safety, and of course costs money. It's been mentioned that some of the guys may quit and leave over this, the linemen. Anyone who has ever run or owned a business should know that turnover is expensive. So I don't see how any of this is going to save us any money, in my opinion. I would like to try to give you some constructive ideas and possible solutions for the situation you have found yourself in. First, you need to be a person of integrity. This means your deeds need to match your words. There's been more industry professionals give you their feedback on this idea, so many that I cannot name them all. I am unaware of a single one that has said this was a good idea. There may be some. These people are consultants, whether you realize it or not. You just never paid them for their input. Hypothetically speaking, if our grid was in a major mess right now, where would our staff go if they couldn't handle it and figure it out? Who would we hire? Who would be the best consultant to help our linemen get it fixed? I think the obvious answer would be Joe Nelson. He just left this department. But if he wasn't willing to do it, I guess you'd have to try to find somebody like Clay Hammer or someone else help him figure it out. So you need to listen and act upon the counsel you have received, and in the last meeting, you then should have voted no for your words and your deeds to match. Successful people get the best people they can, and they pay accordingly, while unsuccessful people will try cutting corners and eventually fail. The garbage in, garbage out concept. Hire the most qualified person you can find right now for the money you can spend. And what this situation has shown you is that you have critical people out there that are not easily replaced. Have that qualified person, then train up a successor that can eventually take over. I hear we have other critical people in the city right now that you would find yourself in maybe the same reactive mode. Bob Zemke's position, I heard, is one that is, for an example, one where it's not something anybody's going to pick up right away, so you might want to have somebody start shadowing him to be able to take over if something was to happen to him, and look at other departments and people that might need this situation. Be proactive instead of reactive. Right now you're being reactive, which is also, here's a sign of bad management. Here we have several departments with dissension in the city right now. The police department, for one, and in public works under the wastewater and solid waste, where you're having high turnover. And this turnover is because of the dissension, not because of the wages. If you lose linemen over this plan, it will also be not because of their wages they're getting paid, but because of the dissension you're going to be causing. Again, more bad management. And this bad management solely would ultimately fall on the shoulders of the city manager's job.
Your time is just about up, sir.
Okay. They say that when one person speaks or says something, that equals like 300 more people that feel the same way. Well, 8 people spoke against it last time. Nobody really spoke for it. That would be like the whole community, but we know that's not the whole community. There's 4 of you that have been voting yes for this, and there's others that are in favor of it because it's going to financially benefit them.
Can you please wrap it up, sir?
Yeah, I can. So you need to do what the people have said. You need to do what the counselors say. And if you want to continue to vote yes, Grand Canyon's not close by, but the Horn Cliffs is. You're free to go over there. You won't find signs.
Thank you, sir.
Do what you want.
Anybody else like to speak to views related to items on today's agenda? Mr. Whitethorn, someone's up behind you there, so. Go ahead, Ole, you had your hand up first. Mr. Whitethorn, then Mr. Havlick, and then I'm losing track of names here, so.
Hi, my name is David Whitethorn. I represent myself. I turned in a public appeal to the Debbie this morning. It's an unofficial thing, but there's 272 signatures on it. I hope you take a serious look at what these people are asking for. This thing hit the street Friday. Saturday, there was a big thing that happened at Sons Norway. A lot of people weren't around to get their signatures. Same thing happens yesterday for some people that are no longer with us. But there's a lot of people out there that really hope you people take a serious look at what's going on here and take their signature into consideration. Thank you.
Good afternoon. I'm Chelsea Tremblay representing myself. I've been listening to recent conversations but never really knew when to give input. And after listening to rhetorical escalation and reading emails on KFSK's website where an assembly member overstepped into discussion about micromanaging borough personnel, I felt compelled to give 2 cents. And I support the proposed reorganization, and I've spoken to many others who do as well, and here's why. This management position is about oversight, preparing large and small-scale projects for completion. With this reorganization, there will be an interdepartment lead for the on-site moments and safety oversight. This seems like a perfectly reasonable plan. The big picture is cost and government efficiency. We know we'll need contractors to assist with projects, and that has always been the case, even with the prior director who had the qualifications some think should be required. The current salary allotment wasn't enough to bring in a large number of qualified applicants. How much would we have to raise it to change that situation? Would this position become $150,000, $200,000 for a single position? Even then, we would still need to hire contractors, unavoidable in this highly specialized field. I know this position is paid for out of the electrical department funds, not the general. That fund came from ratepayers. So let's explore that and think about our community as a holistic system. Ratepayers include a few big users, like our major processing plants, the hospital, and government buildings. Of those big users, things that we used to take for granted have shown to be fluid. Some processors are shifting their work around and have been less active in recent years in town. The hospital, facing replacement or renovation, is a big looming question mark. Then there's the government program or government buildings, including schools. As our population is slowly dropping, state funding sources are unreliable, and the federal system is basically a reality show, this is the exact wrong time to increase the salary and pay upwards of $40,000 in the search cost for a managerial position, which we probably don't need. I commend the manager for looking for ways to save money, and I'm thankful for some of the conversations this has encouraged. I'm hopeful in the long run, as we look for ways to get creative and stretch all available dollars, that we can find ways to work together. Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm John Haverlick. I'm representing myself, and I'm really glad Chelsea went before me. She's a lot better speaker. But I wanted to talk about 2 things. One, I wanted to thank you for your movement on the tax fee. I think that's an excellent first step, and I applaud your efforts. I go for a 5-mile walk each day, and I go past 24 houses that are $300,000 to $1 million homes, and no one's in them.
I don't believe that's on our agenda today, Mr.
I know, but I wanted to thank you, and I wanted to give you a reason why. The other thing I wanted to talk about was restructuring. I don't think we should micromanage our city manager. I think he's doing an excellent job, and we all need to look at spending less. I'm hoping that this, again, like the taxes, is just a start, where you're going to be looking at a lot more things to cut, because we need to. And I've worked with Carl for years when I was with PIA, and I had no experience when I went in there. And through Senator Murkowski and some other people, we were able to bring in, or still bring in, $1 million a year into this community. And it was with Carl's help and Senator Murkowski that we accomplished that. And so far, we brought in $12 million for projects specifically for Petersburg. And it was all because of out-of-the-box thinking and pushing the limits and trying to save money rather than to spend it. So I really hope that you support this reorganization. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Haverlick. Anybody else in the audience today that has any views with related to today's agenda items? Please. That's you. Yeah, sorry. Please state your name and who you represent.
My name is Shelley Yort, and I represent myself. And I wasn't going to speak, but my biggest thing is that I think that when you hire someone, you should try to hire from within. We know that Petersburg's a hard place for people to, they say they want to move here, but then they get here and they don't want to stay for whatever their reasons. So why not look within hiring someone within the electrical company and moving them up through the ranks? And then the other thought is that, there are a lot of people that go to college, young adults that go to college, and they learn a trade. And when you learn a trade, you become an apprenticeship or different journeyman. And that is so that you can move up through the ranks and become maybe the manager or whatever someday. And I just think that that's where we need to look at. We don't need to go outside. There's got to be somebody in the city that has some of the training and the knowledge and the know-how. I don't know what's preceded this before. So, if this has already been done and I'm behind the channel here. But I just wanted to put my 2 cents in, and I think that restructuring is not a good idea. I think that there's a reason that the electrical department has had a manager, and I just think it should stay that way. Okay, thank you.
Thank you for your testimony. Anyone else in the audience today that has views related to items on today's agenda? Mr. Rice? Please state your name and who you represent.
George Rice, represent myself. I just have a question. Why the sudden push to restructure?
Well, I guess...
what is the borough after out of Power and Light?
I don't know if they're... how to answer that question. I don't know if they're after anything in particular. It's just was presented to us last May as a money-saving mechanism to replace Joe Nelson.
So, as I understand it, Power and Light has a large resource of money, so to speak. So is the city or the borough, as it would stand now, are they after this money? Is this what they're after?
I don't know that you can just take the money out of an enterprise fund, if that's what you're saying. Well, if that's what you're getting at, Mr. Rice, it's even if this restructuring goes through, wastewater, water, and Power and Light, if they're under the same supervisor, there's still 3 separate enterprise funds, and you have to. If I'm wrong, Steve, maybe you can correct me on this. You can borrow from them, but you can't just take it. They have to stay within their own. The funds have to stay within their own enterprise fund. So I can't.
Okay.
But who knows what kind of ordinances?
Anyway, and for the record, so to speak, I am totally against this restructure. Totally against it.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Rice. Anyone else in the audience today with views related to items on today's agenda? Okay, seeing none, we'll move to the next item on the agenda. Visitors, no, there's a few letters to read. Sorry, I always forget that part.
No problem, thank you. So I just want to say at the outset, you said it earlier, any comments in these letters that I'm reading that are personal toward borough employees, I'm not going to read them into the record. We have a letter here from Wally McDonald with Fleet Refrigeration. Petersburg Borough Assembly, RE Proposed Electric Utility Reorganization. I realize all the assembly members have made up their minds on this issue, so I should let well enough alone, but I can't help but make a couple of observations as this process goes into action. I was unable to attend the most recent assembly meeting. I read about the meeting in the March 1st edition of the Pilot and was struck by a comment reportedly made after the meeting by J. Stanton Greger. He is reported to have said testimony against the proposal was likely coordinated. If this report is correct, I'm curious to know what he implies. I assure you, my written testimony was coordinated by no one but myself. This issue has been discussed at length among colleagues and friends at job sites, on street corners, at the post office, in the coffee shops. I appreciate the viewpoint that perhaps the electric utility is too independent, that modern administrative methods should supersede, but I disagree. No one should need be reminded that we are not a part of the North American power grid. Southern Southeast relies on an independent power grid that is still being developed, and development horizons for this kind of complex infrastructure requires planning on the order of decades ahead. When we have enterprise funds dedicated to future development, when infrastructure improvement opportunities appear, we have the cash for matching funds, rather than having to borrow funds and saddle ratepayers with paying off the interest through increased power rates. I, too, remember the 70s and 80s when we made sure we had matches and candles stashed in a kitchen drawer because we were sure to need them all too frequently. As a community, we've been able to develop a much more reliable utility with a very good rate for consumers. What worries me is that the Electric Utility Enterprise Fund will be treated as a sort of slush fund to help pay bills for other borough departments. Of course, when the money runs out, just raise the electric rates to pull in more money. Unlike sales tax increases, you don't have to go to a ballot measure to do that. A 4-3 vote by the Assembly would suffice. There are differing opinions on this issue, as noted by Nancy Strand, but I feel you need to give more weight to the opinions of the professionals that help keep things humming around here. I speak only for myself as a private citizen who votes in every election. I assure you this letter has not been coordinated, coached, conspired, or coerced by anyone. Sincerely, Wally McDonald. This is a letter from Elizabeth Bacon. Assembly members of the Borough of Petersburg. This letter reflects only my opinion and not my employer or the employees of PMC, Petersburg Medical Center. I am not an expert on electricity. You have already heard from a cadre of experts with concerns of your plans to consolidate departments. My concern evolves around the potential impact of your decision. When our family first moved to Petersburg in the fall of 1994, power interruptions were frequent and often longer than an hour, sometimes even weekly during certain times of the year. Those of us who have been here long enough will recall more than a few holidays where the power load was so high on this community, we cooked our holiday turkeys in the oven on low an extra 4 hours. People have lost computers or freezers from brownouts. Power outages impact people in many different ways. Thankfully, many improvements have occurred over the years, making this a rare occurrence. Stable staffing in the utility department, including an electrical superintendent at the helm, resulted in responsible planning. This planning provided citizens and businesses stable and safe electricity. Stability of electrical service matters to me. If a patient happens to be in the CT scan when the power is interrupted, the equipment shuts down and the unit needs to be restarted. If the unit is not damaged by the hard shutdown, or worse, a long brownout, precious minutes are lost. Restarting the CT scanner after an unexpected shutdown takes time. Internet connections required for transferring images to organ can also be impacted. The report from the radiologist is now delayed until the equipment is restored. Of course, the hospital has a generator and all sensitive equipment is on this backup power. The transition to generator takes a few seconds, and this is when the systems are most vulnerable. PMC runs about 20 or so CT scans a month. We don't have that many power outages anymore. So when they do occur, the likelihood of them hitting when your spouse, mother, father, sister, or child is on the table getting a scan is low. When determining the cause of a stroke, every minute counts, and stable electricity should never be a concern. Safety matters to me. Patient safety and rapid diagnostics are essential when performing CT scan studies, so appropriate therapy is rapidly initiated. And patients are not unnecessarily exposed to additional radiation. In the utility department, electricity is a life safety issue. In addition to having an adequately staffed electrical department, an electrical superintendent oversees all technical operations, and this will provide a safer working environment for your staff. Does stability and safety matter to you? Prove to me this proposed business plan has succeeded in other communities. Do not make Petersburg the beta site for consolidation of management of two distinctly different entities. Please consider the overall impact of your decision instead of just the money saved. Thank you for allowing my input to be considered before you make your decision on this third and final reading. Elizabeth Bacon. And this is from Max Warhatch. Good afternoon. I listened to the meeting last Monday. I have a few things for you. First off, I appreciate the will to forward a resolution on the sea otter problem. I think that will represents good representation of the community at large. On the head tax issue, I think both Mark and Kurt brought up two very salient points. I have always been a head tax supporter, since I believe every industry should have some type of tax associated to help mitigate impacts. Kurt's point about home porting is important, since those people will be staying overnight at least once. There will be some tax benefit associated with this that has not been before. Let's see how it works on Main Street for a while and then decide. We can impose a tax down the road when, if we deem necessary. Mark's point about litigation is well-based, using Juneau as an example. My understanding of the Juneau suit is that while Juneau put money they felt was of benefit to the cruise industry, the industry did not. Thus, if you are going to collect a head tax, my recommendation would be to include the taxed industry on what they felt were things the money should be applied to. If you don't, litigation could become very likely. Now for the restructuring. Jay made the statement that he was not interested in micromanaging. This is hardly micromanagement. It is the restructuring of an enterprise fund that is functioning exactly as it should be and has been for a very long time. Jeff asked the question, what could happen? A hypothetical question deserves a hypothetical answer. What if Ocean Beauty decided in the next few years to reinvest in Petersburg, since we have ample water and affordable electricity? If they march into the utility director's office and tell him they need X amount of kilowatts, upgrades, new lines, etc., will the utility director be able to give him a suitable short answer on how fast the borough could comply? Would the utility director know the first thing about how to begin? Will that be on the lineman? Will the utility director just Google it? If a processor wanted to start processing fish in our community, we should have someone there who can plan with them. We shouldn't have to wait and hire a consulting firm to decide if what they want to do is feasible and in our community's best interest. There has been a pile of testimony about this restructuring. Employees who are going to have to work in this restructured atmosphere have been cast as malcontents by some. Past employees, past council members, current and past SEPA members, and professional electricians' testimony has been discounted. Why are we restructuring the one department we have that is operating as it should be? To save money, which it appears to me to be an elaborate shell game. It just takes us back to the point we were at before the Public Works Director got an assistant. We are losing a job here. Does that mean there was one too many before, or that the electric superintendent's old job is just that easy? If that is the case, it seems odd that nobody ever picked up on that before. Why would they, though? The enterprise fund was working perfectly. Yeah, let's fix it. Eric commended Public Works on their snow removal efforts. He is the only guy in town I've heard express that, just saying. Sincerely, Max Warhatch.
Is that the last, last of the letters, or is there more?
It is, unless you would like me to read the unofficial
Maybe just the title
wording.
of it. If you could, please, and I won't put it on the mayor's report.
The Honorable Mayor Mark Jensen and the Public Borough Assembly. Public appeal. We, the concerned citizens and electrical ratepayers of the Petersburg Borough, respectfully request the members of the Petersburg Borough Assembly to vote no to adopt the proposed changes to the following: ordinances 2018-05, 2018-06, 2018-07, 2018-08, 2018-09, and 2018-10 in the third and final reading at the Borough Assembly meeting at 12 p.m. on March 5th, 2018. We are firmly opposed to the Borough Manager's plan to restructure the Petersburg Municipal Power and Light Department into an electric utility to be combined with water utility, sewer utility, and to provide for a utility director as head of the electric utility. Carl Hagerman as appointed by the Borough Manager.
And just on a note, there's 270 signatures, I believe, on that, and like was mentioned in an email to the Assembly earlier, this is unofficial because to get an official petition, that can take up to 2 weeks, I think, by the time you run it by the clerk and the attorney. So I think that was the outreach by these people. So is there any other visitors in the audience with views related to items on today's agenda? If not, we're going to move forward to the visitors' views unrelated to items on today's agenda. Is there anybody in the audience that has a view that's not expressed on our talked about that on our agenda? Okay, I see no hands coming up. There are no board, commission, and committee reports. There are no items on the consent agenda, which brings us to report of other officers, and there are no reports slated there. The mayor's report, I had nothing in print, but I did have a discussion, as you probably were all aware of, an assembly that Liz Cabrera, the PEDC director, and myself have had a conversation with Chris Maish, is how he pronounced his name. I probably even mispronounced it after he said it to me, but since the last meeting, we sent a letter to the Division of Forestry appealing their 5-year timber plan on the borough, on property in Southeast, which some of it included land in Thomas Bay and on Metcalf Island at Point Frederick. The way it was explained to me was some of the Point Frederick land is, and it might have been mislabeled at the time we selected it, but it is part of the state forestry land. But the land in Thomas Bay wasn't, and as Chris Maish referred to a communication from the governor's office and from the commissioner of DNR asking him to put this on hold. We will get something in writing from him in the form of an email after the public testimony closes, which I believe is March of this month. So I think that's kind of a positive note. He was very good to work with on the phone, and I had a conversation with Liz, and she felt the same way. I hope he's right, but on this land transaction, going forward fairly soon. But the only dealings I've had in the last 11 years I've been here with DNR, it took us decades to get the land at Scow Bay. So keep our fingers crossed. I think we need to keep focused on that. So hopefully it gets conveyed before it's logged. Anyway, Steve, did you have anything? That's it for the mayor's report. Next time we'll have some, advertising for open positions and back to the normal routine. So, Steve, anything?
No.
Okay. Nothing on the manager's report. Okay, unfinished business. Does anybody want to take a break? We've only been into this 50 minutes. We should maybe be able to make it through. Just thought I don't see any interest in a break. Okay, ordinances for the third and final reading. Ordinance 2018-02, an ordinance adopting a new Petersburg Municipal Code, Chapter 4.80, to impose a marine passenger fee in order to address the costs incurred by the borough for services and infrastructure rendered to cruise ships and cruise ship passengers visiting the borough. I'd entertain a motion to adopt this ordinance in its third and final reading.
So move.
Second.
Motion's been made by Member Strand, seconded by Member Mucci. One thing here, Kurt, are you still with us?
Yes, I am, Mark.
Oh, okay. Yeah, he's in the game. I don't see you, so I just thought I'd ask. Any discussion on this?
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, I would like to have just one more appeal for those boats that are going to home port in Petersburg. I think we ought to give them a break. So I'd really hate to see a blanket policy thrown out there without at least some some way of maybe capturing this opportunity to let the cruise ships company know that Petersburg's open for business if you want to spend a night there.
Okay. Without reading through the ordinance again, I'm not so sure that language is in there. Member Mucci?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, I think we added it.
Oh, did we add it? Okay.
At the last meeting. It stated that if,
That's right, we did.
yeah, if it began and ended here, they were only going to be charged once. We're not going to double charge them.
Okay, that's right. So, Kurt, did you hear that? We did address that. I couldn't remember.
Well, we did, but I was thinking no more along the lines of not charging them at all if they wanted to spend the night instead of double charging them. But like I say, I'll go with the will of the assembly, but I'll be voting no on that because of the way it's written now.
Any other discussion? I will be voting no against this, and my main concern is the litigation. I know it would be nice to collect something, but I think it would be in our best interest to wait until Juno's lawsuit is resolved and see how that comes out. But if there's no Member Castro.
Yep. Yeah, I'll be voting for this. However, I do have reservations about charging home-ported boats even once. I'd prefer we didn't charge them at all, being as that they're going to be able to supply so much revenue into the town by just their proximity and amount of time they spent in here. But overall, I feel that this is an ordinance that would benefit the borough, so I'll be voting for this.
Okay. I don't see any other input, so will the clerk call the roll? This is the third reading for ordinance 2018-02.
Kurt?
No.
Jeff?
Yes.
Nancy?
Yes.
Eric?
Yes.
Mark?
No.
Jay?
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, ordinance 2018-02 passes with a 4-2 vote with members Walhooter and Mayor Jensen opposed. The next ordinance for third and final reading is ordinance 2018-04. This is an ordinance amending Chapter 3.08 of the Municipal Code entitled Assembly and Mayor to add agenda formation language and to amend the deadline for submission of items to be included on the agendas. I'd entertain a motion to adopt this in its third and final reading.
So moved.
Second.
Motion been made by Member Strand, seconded by Member Mucci. Is there any discussion? Member Stan Gregor.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. And just some context for those listening at home, since we're in our third reading, to be just clear on why I'll be voting for this. We can do this any way we want. We talked about who could put things on the agenda, whether it be the mayor sets the agenda, multiple members. My reasoning for this is I think one person should be allowed to put anything on the agenda. And the why behind that is, on the off chance you're in the sole minority on the assembly, you should still have an equal voice. Be able to put something on there as a discussion topic, as an action item. And as 7 elected officials, we should all have that right to at least bring something up for discussion. And I think this protects that the potential minority vote. That's all.
Any other discussion? Kurt, do you have any input?
Nope, I'm okay.
Okay. I've got a couple concerns. I won't be voting for this, and I like the way it was worded at first, when it took 2 assembly members, or the mayor, or the manager, and the clerk would draft the agenda to put things on the agenda. That's one thing I would like to see, but that isn't the way it will be voted on today unless it's amended. The reason I feel that way is the person chairing the meeting should have some control of what goes on the agendas. If there's something that isn't really important, you can push it off to the next meeting, but then I understand where Mr. Stanton Gregor's coming from as well, because, one person might not think something's important, the next person might. Another thing that was, I know the clerk's very busy, and we changed in here from Wednesday at 5 p.m. for the deadline to have things put on the agenda. In this version, it's noon on Monday, or no, 5 p.m. Monday. So that's one full week before the actual meeting where you can't put things on the agenda unless you amend it at the meeting, and then if I'm not mistaken, then you can't put an action item on. So anyway, I'll be voting no, and that's the reasons why. Any other discussion? Clerk, call the roll.
Kurt?
Yes.
Nancy?
Yes.
Mark?
No.
Jay?
Yes.
Jeff?
Yes.
Eric?
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, ordinance 2018-04 passes with a 5-1 vote with Mayor Jensen opposed. That brings us to the first ordinance pertaining to the restructuring, and that is ordinance 2018-05, and ordinance amending Chapter 14.16 of the Municipal Code entitled Electricity to amend the title to Electric Utility, to provide for a utility director as head of the Electric Utility Department, and to establish fines for violations of provisions of Chapter 14-16. I'd entertain a motion to approve this ordinance and its third and final reading.
So move.
Second. Motion been made by Member Strand, seconded by Member Stanton Greger to approve ordinance 2018. Let me get the 05. Any discussion? Member Mucci?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm going to be voting for this, as I will be voting for the other restructuring things. I know, I hear what people are saying, I understand some of their concerns, but I feel differently about that. I think there are some issues within the electrical utility that need to get looked at, and hopefully by this restructuring, we'll be able to start to address some of those concerns. Thank you.
Any other discussion? Member Castro.
Yeah, I have. I've written up a little bit of something that I'd like to be able to browse through as I cover my position. So after reading through a number of the social media posts and knowledge of the petitions passed around this weekend, I feel there are a number of assumptions being shared around town that I'd like to comment on. My rationale stands on a lot of evidence and in respectful consideration to all those who submitted letters and spoke to this matter. So assumption number one is hiring somebody without an electrical engineering degree means no electrical experience at head of the department. Scott's experience and opinion has been thoroughly discounted, but is indeed largely the reason I feel as comfortable with this decision as possible in the face of all this opposition. Scott has been a journeyman lineman for 33 years and has worked every aspect of electrical utility operations. For 5 years in the mid-2000s, Scott was a foreman of an electrical company, supervising up to 15 employees, and for the last decade has been the line foreman for the Pimple crew. He is skilled in 4 to 25 kilovolt reconductoring substations in metro areas and small towns, 12 to 25 kilovolt underground, and 69 to 345 kilovolt overhead hot work, and his experience gloving 4 to 2400 kilovolts. He's been a union steward and a safety chairman for the Local 57. If you're listening on the radio now and this electrician-specific language is overwhelming, then join the group. Most of that goes directly over my head, but I expect that the professionals in this room understand because this is their livelihood. Something they've been educated for and have trained for, and something that they'll continue doing at their utmost, regardless of who's manning the helm at the department. This ain't Scott's first rodeo, and he would excel at his job of general foreman, the technical expert at the electrical department. As to the second assumption, that increased costs for consulting and necessary training. There are those who feel that hiring somebody as utility director instead of an electrical superintendent won't end up saving money because of the increased consultation costs. During Joe Nelson's tenure as electrical superintendent, the borough spent between $200,000 and $300,000 for consultants. And like the manager has pointed out before, this is entirely expected due to the specific technical aspects of everything going on with our electrical generation. Like Mr. Nelson, Carl is not a licensed design engineer, so consultants will continue to be mandatory for any large building projects. When T.J. Daw spoke last week, he mentioned the additional trainings that Carl will likely need to attend in order to more fully understand the systems under the electrical department's guidance. I did a little Google search, and the University of Arizona has a $1,000 online class for hydroelectric power plant operation certificate that Carl and other borough employees might be able to take with these savings within the electrical enterprise fund. For the third assumption regarding safety, Member Morrell mentioned that the electricians needed a supervisor skilled in electrical engineering to make sure no one was cutting corners and taking shortcuts. I don't feel that this is a fear at all. We have professionals working in the field who know their position and responsibilities as well as anyone. Incontrovertible evidence that safety is upheld with this type of leadership structure can be proven at the icicle plant. Emily Spurl is the maintenance manager who supervises many leads, including the electrical department, where Nathan Midkiff is head electrician who supervises all the other electricians. A month ago, the Icicle leadership wrote a letter to the Assembly stating that regardless of their organization structure, quote, "We at Petersburg Fisheries have an exemplary safety record that we work hard at and are proud of." And the fourth assumption that I'd like to comment on is that the town will change. Carl Carl and Scott have been safely and effectively sharing the leadership of this electrical department for the last 8 months following Mr. Nelson's retirement. If the restructuring were to happen tomorrow, the community will not notice a difference in service. These last 8 months have proven the electrical department will continue to function as it has in the past. I only hope that I've helped to educate some in the community about why I'm in support of this reorganization. I have my trust in Carl and in Scott, and that they'll continue to lead the electrical department in the right direction down the road. That is why I'll be voting for the reorganization for these next 7 ordinances.
Any other discussion? Well, I don't support the restructuring. After, I know it's not a formal or not an official ballot or petition, but there's 270 signatures. That's a pretty good percentage of the 1,100 people that voted in the last election. Without doing the math, I would say probably right around 25%, and that's on a 2-day gathering of signatures. Today alone, 12 people testified on the restructuring, 10 against, 2 for. And all since its inception, May 2nd of 2017, I didn't think it was a good idea. I appreciate everybody's opinions, but I don't think it's a good move for the municipality. Member Stanton Greger.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I've been pretty clear throughout in my support of this reorganization plan. In short, I respect everyone who has spoken to this issue, regardless of their position on it. It takes time and effort to be involved and active in our local government. I've never seen this issue as like this us against them. I think some of this dialogue is looked that way, but I don't see it as an us against them issue. As myself an assembly member, I have nothing at all to gain by this issue whatsoever. My role up here is to make a decision on the best direction for the borough and taking in as much feedback as I can. And Member Castro touched on that very, very aptly. And having spent more hours than I'd like to count on this issue, I came to a firm decision in favor of this restructuring. No feedback was ignored or dismissed, but in the end, I must take in all information and make the decision that I think will best serve all the residents of the borough. And that's what I've tried to do here. Thanks.
Any other discussion? Member Strand.
I will continue to support the reorganization and be voting in favor of these ordinances for the very same reason these two just mentioned. I think it's in our best interests.
Okay, any other discussion? Clerk, call the roll.
Nancy?
Yes.
Eric?
Yes.
Kurt?
No.
Jay?
Yes.
Jeff?
Yes.
Mark?
No. Okay, ordinance 2018-05 passes with a 4-2 vote. Just mention once again that Member Morrell was trying to Skype in but couldn't, and so it's a 4-2 vote with Member Walhuter on the phone and Mayor Jensen opposed. Ordinance 2018-06 is the next ordinance up for third reading, and this is an ordinance amending Chapter 14.04 of the Municipal Code entitled Water to amend the title to Water Utility, to provide for a utility director as head of the Water Utility Department, and to establish fines for violations of provisions of Chapter 14.04. Entertain a motion to approve this ordinance in its third and final reading.
So moved.
Second.
Motion been made by Member Stanton Greger, seconded by Member Strand. Any discussion? Clerk, call the roll.
Mark?
No.
Jay?
Yes.
Eric?
Yes.
Jeff?
Yes.
Nancy?
Yes.
Kurt?
No.
Okay, ordinance 2018-06 passes in its third and final reading with a 4-2 vote. Member Walhuter and Mayor Jensen opposed. Next ordinance is 2018-07. This is an ordinance amending Chapter 1408 of the Municipal Code entitled Sewer, to amend the title to Sewer Utility, to provide for a utility director as head of the Sewer Utility Department, and to establish fines for violations of provisions of Chapter 14.08. I'll entertain a motion to adopt ordinance 2018-07 in its third and final reading.
So moved.
Second.
Motion been made by Member Strand, seconded by Member Castro. on ordinance 2018-07. Any discussion? Clerk call the roll.
Mark?
Nope.
Jay?
Yes.
Nancy?
Yes.
Jeff?
Yes.
Eric?
Yes.
Kurt?
No.
Thank you.
Okay, unless I lost track, I believe we're on ordinance 2018-08, or is that the one we just did?
Nope, you're on record.
An ordinance providing for Chapter 3.76 of the Municipal Code entitled Administrative Officers and Appeals Process, updating current language to reflect borough incorporation. I'd entertain a motion to approve ordinance 2018-08 in its third and final reading.
So moved.
Second.
Motion made by Member Strand, seconded by Member Stanton Greger. Any discussion on ordinance 2018-08? Clerk call the roll.
Jeff?
Yes.
Mark?
Nope.
Nancy?
Yes.
Eric?
Yes.
Kurt?
No.
Jay?
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, ordinance 2018-08 passes with a 4-2 vote, with Member Walhuter and Mayor Jensen opposed. Excuse me. Next item on the agenda is ordinance 2018-09. An ordinance amending Chapter 3.38 of the Municipal Code entitled Public Works Department to remove operation responsibilities for the water utility and sewer utility from the Public Works Director duties. I'd entertain a motion to adopt ordinance 2018-09 in its third and final reading.
So moved.
Second.
Motion been made by Member Strand, seconded by Member Mucci to adopt ordinance 2018-09 in its third and final reading. Any discussion? Clerk call the roll.
Eric?
Yes.
Kurt?
No.
Jeff?
Yes.
Nancy?
Yes.
Jay?
Yes.
Mark?
No.
Thank you.
Okay, that fails, or that passes with a 4-2 vote. And that was ordinance 2018-09, that's third and final reading. That brings us to ordinance 2018-10, an ordinance amending Chapter 3.40 of Municipal Code entitled Electric Utility to amend the title to Electric Utility, Water Utility, and Sewer Utility Departments, and to provide for the three utilities to be the operation responsibilities of the Utility Director. I'd entertain a motion to approve this ordinance in its third and final reading.
So moved.
Second.
Motion been made by Member Mucci, seconded by Member Strand. Any discussion? Clerk call the roll.
Eric?
Yes.
Jay?
Yes.
Kurt?
No.
Nancy?
Yes.
Mark?
No.
Jeff?
Yes.
Okay, ordinance 2018-10 passes in its third and final reading with a 4-2 vote, with Member Walhuter and Mayor Jensen opposed. Okay, next item is new business, and this is the resolution, and it's Resolution 2018-07, and it's a resolution requesting the United States Congress to support sea otter management in Southeast Alaska by amending the Marine Mammal Protection Act and urging the United States Department of the Interior to permit Alaska Native organizations and the Alaska Department of Fish and Game to co-manage, take, and study marine mammals under the Marine Mammal Protection Act. I'd entertain a motion to approve Resolution 2018-07.
So moved.
Second.
Motion been made by Member Castro, seconded by Member Strand. Discussion? Member Castro.
Yeah. All the letters written to this point have been very compelling by all the individuals and groups, and I sincerely hope that our federal officials take note on our comments.
Okay, thank you. Any other discussion, Member Mucci?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Hey, so on the title of this resolution, it talks about the Department of Interior permitting the Alaska Native organizations and the Department of Fish and Game to co-manage this. Is that our intent?
I'm going to refer to the clerk. She compiled this resolution from Senator Stedman, the one from Wrangell, and some of the other ones we received from SARPTA and other organizations in Southeast Conference. Yep. So that was their language, and my thought on this is just for Petersburg to make a statement that we need to ramp up somehow the management of otters, and remember, Mucci, you've seen the devastation on the fishing ground, so I'd let them do in the weeds changing if Congress gets into it. But yeah.
Sure.
So, Member Mucci?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. But it also says, be it further resolved that it authorized the Alaska Native Organization or the Alaska Department of Fish and Game to take any marine mammals as necessary. And, if we're not really concerned about what it says, that's fine, but it just seems kind of unrealistic to expect Fish and Game to be harvesting marine mammals. I don't know. I didn't know that.
Well, I guess you could make a motion to amend it and take that language out if you'd like. I mean, I've read through it, and I've read through the other ones, and I just think it's adequate at this stage of the game, but, that's everybody's...
That's fine.
If you'd like to make that amendment, we could, sir.
No, Mr. Mayor, thank you. It's just wanted to bring it up. It just looks kind of weird that...
Right, who knows where it'll end up, if it'll change.
If it'll go, yeah. Nope.
So, Member Castro.
So maybe just a point of clarification. Debbie, you said that this is something that has already been shared throughout Southeast Conference, and so we would be sending the same resolution that other local communities have also submitted.
Well, I don't like to just sign on to the same resolution. Okay. Personally, it's a personal thing, because I think that the people that read them are going to be like, well, we've read this, and not finish it. Okay. So I actually took a combination of the Senate resolution. Rangel's resolution and Southeast Conference's resolution were not as strong as the Senate resolution. Mm-hmm. I actually liked things, this is my personal opinion, things out of the Senate resolution, and that's why I put them here. And that is why I sent everything to you guys so you could read and decide yourself what you liked. Mm-hmm. So no, this isn't exactly anybody's resolution.
Okay.
And it is true that Southeast Conference and Rangel's resolution is not as strong. It's not as pointed. It doesn't direct as much as this one does.
Okay.
Member Stanton Greger. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I guess I would kind of echo Member Mucci's comments regarding the, in conjunction with Alaska Department of Fish and Game to co-manage. I don't know if that's going to be a realistic or even feasible option, but on the whole, I can live with the resolution, and I'll be voting for it.
Any other discussion on Resolution 2018-07? Clerk, call the roll.
Yeah, Mr. Mayor.
Oh, yeah, Kurt, sorry.
Kurt. Okay, I know in the past that other states down in the lower 48 has hired, the Fish and Game has hired, predator hunters, so maybe this language could also be interpreted as such.
Could be, yeah. So I guess this is going to take a while to get vetted at the federal level, I'm sure. Any other discussion on Resolution 2018-07? Clerk, call the roll.
Eric?
Yes.
Jay?
Yes.
Kurt?
Yes.
Nancy?
Yes.
Mark?
Yes.
Jeff?
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, Resolution 2018-07 passes with a 6-0 vote, passes unanimously. Next item on the agenda is item B under new business. This is appointment of utility director and public works director positions put on the agenda by Member Mucci, Stanton Greger, and I think the manager talked to them about it, put the wording in here. So I'd entertain a motion to approve this appointment.
So move.
Second.
Motion been made by Member Strand, seconded by Member Stanton Greger. Just for the little bit of clarification, I talked to the manager about this earlier today, and we have over on the blackboard here, or whiteboard, whatever you want to call it, two different scenarios. And I asked him which scenario would be the one that would be followed, and the manager said it would probably be the one with, what is it, the general foreman position?
Yes, sir, general foreman.
And that would be, as presented before, would be Mr. Newman, who's in that position now. So his salary would go up from what it is currently. He's an hourly person. I'm saying this mainly for people listening. And where Mr. Cotta will go to $82,000 a year and Mr. Hageman will go to $108,000 a year. Those are salaried positions. But when Mr. Newman is attending assembly meetings, if it's in overtime status, he will be getting paid time and a half because he is an hourly position. I don't know how we can, we can't get around that when there's the union hourly person. So I might add a little more under the job description part of this, but I'd like the Assembly's input first, if there is any.
Sure.
Do you have your hand up, Jeff? Or?
No.
Member Steinberger.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Something I was reminded of this week is, and it's worth repeating here, not everyone hears our explanations for why we vote the way we do each time out. We've talked about this issue for quite some time. You know, people can't always or don't always want to listen to meetings. I get it. People are busy. Because of this, I know for myself I should always be overly clear when explaining my position. You know, I've said it before. I think I've been clear. People at home might not have heard it. So it's my responsibility to be clear to everyone here at home, and so that's what I'll do here. I obviously am in full support of this. Contrary to some of the comments made, Carl Hagerman is a very competent person. His resume clearly shows he's a good manager of people. He's good at policy. He's good at purchasing. You can go down the line. His record's clear. Flip the script over to Scott Newman. As Eric Castro very clearly stated, Scott is wildly competent in this position. They've been doing it for 8 months, and they've been successful. Chris Cotta, wildly competent in his position. He's got the skills to succeed. These people have skills to succeed. And I'll flip the coin for the sake of argument. Is this guaranteed to be successful? Of course not. Just as hiring someone from some other department down south, somewhere else in Alaska, there's no guarantees they would be a good fit or be successful also. You can't guarantee things like that. There are no guarantees with that. But so for the sake of argument, let's say we find this is not a successful, let's say Carl, Scott, Chris, Steve, they decide, this isn't working. Well, then we can do something else. And I'll be the first person to be accountable if that doesn't work, because there are no guarantees. That said, I think it's really good outside-the-box thinking, but not too far out. It's been very well thought out. Steve's put a lot of time into this. Carl, Scott, and Chris have put a lot of time into this, and consequently, I'll definitely be voting for this.
Any other discussion?
Mr. Mayor?
Yes, Member Mucci.
Thank you. So, just to be clear, this motion to do this is just giving Steve the ability to do that. That's what I'm trying to sort out here.
I read it as this will happen tomorrow.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes, Member Mucci.
Now, the question is I don't feel like I'm giving the city manager a direct, not order, but direction to hire these individuals. That's up to Steve to hire these individuals or bring these on to fill these job descriptions.
Okay.
If I may.
I will ask the manager a question. Will you hire Mr. Hagerman and Mr. Cotta and fit Scott Newman into the works effective tomorrow, March 6, 2018? That's basically what I read this says. It says the manager will appoint. It doesn't say he may appoint.
To the mayor. The way our ordinances read and charter reads is that I'm responsible for hiring the department heads with assembly approval. This is asking for your approval to make these steps.
Member Stanton Gregor?
I'm going to, as I mentioned before, going to be overly clear. So to be clear, Mr. Manager, are you feeling compelled by us to make these hires, or this is what you are doing and feeling validated by the Assembly?
No, I'm not feeling compelled. This is, as people have said many times, this was my plan to put forward for a lot of reasons. And, I'm asking your approval for Carl to take on the utility director's role, Chris, Public Works Director, and Scott falls is he's not a department head. That's generally well within my authority to do that, but for the sake of the audience, that's what my intentions are.
Thank you for the redundant clarification. Appreciate it.
Member Mucci.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So, when you appoint these people, will there be any parameters with these appointments? I mean, do there have to be changes in a union member's classification or something?
I can speak to that. Not for Chris and Carl, who are non-union. Their salaries change, their titles change, and
their responsibilities change, and we'll have to work together to make sure we have a smooth transition to that. Scott's kind of a unique case. The general foreman is a new position. We have to negotiate that with the union. I don't anticipate any problems, but I cannot speak to that until we have that conversation. Scott and Carl and I have talked about a salary for him that he's acceptable with, but we have to run that by the union. If the assembly approves all of this, then what I do is we send a letter to the union, telling them exactly what we're trying to do and what we want to pay. The union, in that case, can come back and negotiate that with us. I don't expect it to be a problem, but if it is, I come back to the assembly and say, hey, something happened. In the meantime, Scott will continue until we work out this transition. Scott will continue on as the acting department head, which is why he's at these meetings. And, we'll work through that, I'm assuming, in a very short period of time. The union will respond pretty quickly.
Mr. Mayor?
Member Mucci.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So if your decision to get Scott into his new position, does there come a probationary period to make sure it works, or if it works for him or whatever?
Sure. Through the mayor?
Yes.
Okay. Yes, our current collective bargaining agreement has a 6-month, up to 180-day, what they call probationary period, that basically says that if, either party, we'll get specific here, Scott or I or Carl, decide that, this isn't working, Scott could come forward and say, you know what, I don't want to do this. He's got the right to go back to his old job, basically no questions asked.
Thank you.
Okay, on another note, so if for some reason this part of the restructuring doesn't pass, can we go back and advertise for a power and light superintendent, or no, because we have the wrong job descriptions in our ordinances we just passed?
Sure.
Is that a correct assumption?
Okay, the mayor's correct. We could not recruit for a power and light superintendent. We could recruit for a general foreman if, in fact, we decided that was necessary. I don't anticipate any of this happening, but if we're going to play the what-if game, Scott would go back to the line foreman position that he currently holds, in a sense, and then we would reevaluate that and say, do we need to bring in a general foreman or not? And the answer could be no. One of the earlier presentations that was up on the board, it's not up there now, was the exact same structure we have that the assembly just approved with just a line foreman, not a general foreman. We added the general foreman concept as a way to potentially build a succession plan that has a better chance down in the future of being able to hire from within. One of the things with union organizations is the borough gets to write the job descriptions, the union gets to negotiate salary. And if you add things to job descriptions, you have to generally negotiate that to say, hey, you added responsibilities so that the employee gets more pay. In this case, the general foreman job description asks for more responsibility out of that position, which is why we're giving Scott a raise, and the union can then say, hey, this is what we think it's worth to pay for that. To build the succession plan in a way that this position could potentially be, an applicant for an open utility director type position, you have to do the whole process of having those built into the job description, that the employee can be asked to have budget responsibilities, can be asked to be involved in collective bargaining, can be asked to be involved in these things. And again, kind of leads into that role potentially down the road, of having a good succession plan.
Mr. Castro?
Yeah, being as that I'm a mid-level employee myself, I thoroughly appreciate the fact that you're offering a promotional potential into this workflow. So I prefer the second option to the first without that.
Any other discussion? I'd like to touch on the definition a little bit on these two positions and ask the manager if he feels the people he intends to appoint meet these definitions. Utility director, which will be at water, wastewater, and electrical utility departments. Definition: plans, directs, and coordinates the activities of water, wastewater, and electric utility departments, including, and this is what caught my attention, all construction, operations, personnel, and maintenance activities related to the generation and distribution of electricity. As far as the treatment and distribution of potable water and collection of treatment of wastewater, I have no questions of the person you intend to appoint's capability. I do have a question if he has currently the capabilities to do the electrical part of it. Do you feel he does?
Yes, I do. It's clear in that language. Plans and coordinates are two of the key words there. It's exactly what Carl is very, very good at. Witness in, are getting the PFI switch project done, basically planned with the crew, planned with the outside consultant that was responsible for the work and design of that. That's exactly what this is talking about, is taking these projects, or any project associated with it, and making sure that the staff has the tools that they need to get things done. That involves making those kind of decisions, whether it's, a specialist that needs to be brought in, whether it's timing vacations, whether it's making sure that we give people a lot of advance warning so we do it and don't disrupt people's power or water or wastewater. I mean, all of that is part of what we do when we take a project like rebuilding a pump station, putting a new water line in place. All of that involves planning and coordinating, and the same thing goes for electrical. It's actually working with the staff. You're not going to see the department head. Joe Nelson was never out there up on a pole. Carl's not going to be out there, digging a hole for water, wastewater, or climbing a pole either. His job is to plan and coordinate and manage those functions in a way that we put the right people in the right spot with the right skills.
And that will involve as well as coordinating operations between the intertie from here to Ketchikan.
As much as we do. Most of that's done with SEPA.
On a weekly call-in, if I understand right.
They call in to compare notes to make sure that, is there anything weird going on? Do we expect something be happening in Ketchikan, Wrangell, or Petersburg that may have an impact on the grid? For the most part, our grid connection between all of them is managed by SEPA.
I've seen the SCADA system before, so I understand how it works.
They basically watch everything. And those conversations are, you can ask Scott and Carl directly if you'd like, they're here. But those conversations are a lot about what's going on in each community, what's expected, what's the water flow at locations to make sure that, hey, do we expect a change? Hell, it's down to the level of what's the weather going to be like. I mean, we are a winter peaking system, which means in the wintertime we get to our maximum use. So sometimes it's just simple conversation about, okay, here's what we're expecting.
Right, I understand that part of it. So anyway, I don't feel comfortable with Mr. Hagerman fitting enough of the, knowing enough, and I'm going to be voting against this. Nothing personal. I've said this all along, and if it came to on the other part of the other job description for the other position, without finding it, Public Works. I would like to have someone in there that knows how to put a water line underground to direct the crew. So that's just some of my concerns, and I will leave it at that. So any other discussion? Clerk, call the roll.
Jay?
Yes.
Kurt?
No.
Mark?
No.
Eric?
Yes.
Jeff?
Yes.
Nancy?
Yes.
Okay, move to the next item on the agenda. Ratification of July 1st, 2017 through June 30th, 2020 collective bargaining agreement between the Petersburg Borough and the Petersburg Municipal Employees Association. So this is basically just, I'd entertain a motion to ratify this collective bargaining agreement. Have to have a motion on the floor, I would imagine, to move forward. Isn't this a motion to approve? Okay.
Yes.
Just want to clarify.
Sorry.
Is there a motion?
So move.
Second.
Motion's been made by Member Strand, seconded by Member Stanton Gregor. Then we have a presentation from Mr. Hoag, it looks like.
I put in a memo to you folks.
Right, I've read it.
I'm here to answer questions.
Okay. Does anybody have any questions of Mr. Hoag? Just for the people listening in the audience, Mr. Hoag has been the one that does the negotiating with the unions for the Petersburg side of the agreement. Is that right?
Yep.
Okay. Just want to make sure it's stated right. Yeah, Member Ricci.
And part of that, you've been doing this for free.
Correct.
Oh, yeah.
Just wanted to make sure that that was known as well.
It's pro bono.
I had a question, and it was kind of...
My other profession.
I had a question, and it was answered by the clerk. I saw in here in this part where they're talking about Parks and Rec, and it's has something to do with a janitor, janitorial services. Is that right, Debbie? But what they do, the people at the front desk actually do the janitorial services as well, so they had to change the job classification. I thought it was a new position. I was told it wasn't.
Well, we had a custodian a few years ago with the previous Parks and Rec director, and that position has gone away, and now the facility attendants that work the front desk basically do all the custodial duties at Parks and Recreation. Because those duties were transferred to the facility attendants, and I don't know the exact date this started, but it's been happening for a while now. We bumped up that position by 50 cents an hour. We just let the union know we were doing that. They did not have any objection, of course. And so this is just putting it into the contract now. Getting it on paper is all. Something that's been going on. It's been happening.
Okay, I guess the way I read it was effective July 1st, 2017, the employer will add the position of Parks and Rec custodian.
Really? Where does it say that?
Well, what page is that on? It's 18.4, Article...
101, page 100 and 101.
Well, I don't have a page number here, but it's Appendix... where does it say that?
I'm looking for it here, too.
Appendix A.
Parks and Recreation custodian position, under Article 18. Just the wording caught my attention.
Effective, the employer will increase Step C by 50 cents an hour for facility specialists in the P&R department.
The next one.
Oh, the employer will add the position of, what? To the wage matrix at the same pay.
Right, so I guess I'd have to know what matrix meant. I do, but... Yeah.
Okay, I see.
You see
I can see how you got confused for sure, because it is confusing. We are not,
adding a position.
We are not adding a new position.
All right, because
it's on the wage, the
scale.
It exists, but it's not filled.
Mr.
Questions answered. Member Ricci.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Could we ask John to give us a rundown of what we're voting on here? Because most of the time we've been discussing it's been in an executive session, and I think it'd probably be nice to kind of give John the opportunity to tell us what it means for at least our end of the deal.
I guess you're looking for a percentage increase?
Just what the high points
in a
and
nutshell?
yeah, something like that.
Public might want to know what the dollar value is.
Yeah, the cliff notes, if you will.
The contract was very tough to negotiate because of the financial position of the borough. It provides for a 2% increase retroactive to July 1 for the first year of a 3-year agreement, and there is no increase in the second fiscal year. So they're taking a wage freeze starting July 1, 2018. For the third year of the agreement, there's a reopener, which is we've titled Cross-the-Board Wages Only. That means basically we're not going to look at selective classifications because that is very labor-intensive for the administration to do that, to do a salary survey. And it's just going to be looking basically at cost of living increases, which also takes some guesswork because there is no magic formula for Petersburg cost of living formulas. You look at the West Coast, you look at Anchorage, none of which totally fit. And there were selective increases based somewhat on just taking care of what was occurring, and there are two areas which were tough to fill, and that was police officers and resident assistants. The police component is very tough and is going to get much tougher. There is a national shortage of police officers. There is a statewide shortage of police officers. I briefed you previously in exec session, I think, on the fact that Fairbanks not only has a bonus system, but a bonus system for their officers if they drag somebody from another agency in. They get a finding bonus. We were told recently, I think it was Haynes, was it? Or was it Homer? It's doing another bonus. We've got 2 cities doing hiring bonuses. On the other hand, having spent 25 years, or actually most of my 40-odd year career dealing with law enforcement issues, I can tell you the worst thing you can do is make a bad hire in law enforcement. You simply have to find the right person. Money won't solve the problem totally because this is a unique community. You have to have somebody that's competent and comfortable with small-town law enforcement, but you've got to be competitive. And the problem long-term for the future, I believe, is you cannot keep asking these folks to have their wages diminished, because that's what's been going on here. The last contract and this contract are quite conservative. Remember, they're paying a percentage of the increased costs of medical also. It's on a percentage basis. So all of this means that the employees are losing real-time money and spending power. And this contract was a particularly bitter pill for their bargaining team and was barely accepted by the negotiating team.
But if I understand it right, they haven't voted to approve this yet.
They have not
meaning the unions?
If they vote not to approve it, then we will be back to the Assembly getting formal ratification of what was the last best and final offer, which has provisions in it that are much more favorable to the Bureau and not as favorable to the labor organization. And that was a big motivation for them finally very, very reluctantly accepting this agreement.
Well, we'll see what happens in the future. Member Stanton Gregory?
I just wanted to thank you, John, for your efforts on this. Having looked over this, I'll definitely be voting for this for sure. Thank you.
Any other discussion, Member Castro?
Yeah, this is nothing aimed at Mr. Hogue, but I just I noted on Article 18 right here on this attachment for the changes to agreement, I like the language in here, and I feel it could go a long ways to be able to have the employee feel more empowered within the organization, so that we don't have the dissension within the workplace that some assume may occur. So specifically, the language is, if an employee believes that an employee is actually working in a higher classification without a written assignment to do so, the employee may write a memo to the employee's supervisor with a copy to the borough clerk, so stating. Then the borough will do one of the following: 1, make the assignment in writing; 2, take away the duties from the employee; or 3, explain why the employee is not working outside the employee's job description. I think anything to be able to empower the employees and to be able to give them the ability to kind of work within their assigned job description is best and is honorable to the employee themselves.
Any other questions of Mr. Hogue? Thank you, John. Any other discussion by the Assembly? The clerk, call the roll.
Jay?
Yes.
Mark?
Yes.
Eric?
Yes.
Jeff?
Yes.
Kurt?
Yep.
Nancy?
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you very much, John.
This passed the negotiation with the employees, passes unanimously, and we'll see if they vote to agree on it. Next item on the agenda is fiscal year 2019 Mayor and Assembly travel and training budget. This was put on the agenda by the clerk, and it's something we do need to address on an annual basis. So I'd entertain a motion to approve the Mayor and Assembly travel and training budget as presented.
So moved.
Is there a second? Is there any discussion on this? I have a few things I'd like to add. If the rest of the assembly has input, I'd like to hear it first.
Mr. Member Butchie. Thank you. So on the bottom list there, it talks about open records and open meetings, training and refresher with Attorney Heidemann. Is that something that we should do before the fall of 2019 or something that, I'm just throwing it out there for discussion?
Well, since you brought that up there, I think that was a suggestion of the manager to have our attorney come down, and one of the reasons was then the assembly could meet our attorney. The assembly changes every year, so if the clerk, if the attorney wanted to come down and meet the assembly, I think it should be on her own dime. My recommendation would be to go to the Alaska Association of Municipal Attorneys. And there's a man named there, Mike Gotti, who does all the training for Alaska Municipal League on an annual basis, all the municipalities throughout the whole state. He's very experienced in it. I'm not sure how many years he's been doing it, but it's a number of years. I think it would be better to have someone that's not associated with the borough in any way give the training. He's been to Wrangell before. They really appreciated his training and his visit. My thought was, if whoever comes down, we should include the harbor board, school board, hospital board, planning and zoning, and get as many people in the room as we could to get this training. But I would recommend reaching out to Mr. Gotti. I talked to him the other day about it, and Debbie came up with a figure of like $5,500, something
58.
Like 58, and his estimate on having done this before was right in there within a couple $100, and that was just on the back of a napkin. So that's what I would recommend, but it's up to the assembly. So if we want to have that particular language in here that says we bring a particular person in, we could leave it as our attorney, Sarah Heidemann, if you guys desire, or we could change it just to approve the funding and pick a name later.
But just to get back to Assemblymember Mitri's question about the timing, the only reason we chose the fall was because we have so many assembly members that are gone in the summertime. So that's, that part of the schedule would be entirely up to the assembly. Tell us a specific month that you want to do this and who you want us to bring, and we'll take care of it from there.
Member Stanton Gregor, and then
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Question for the clerk, if I may. So, help me clarify, Attorney Heidemann, she is a municipal attorney, yes?
Yes.
I'm trying to flesh out what, the mayor's comments about using somebody from AML, which I don't necessarily have a problem with. I mean, whoever's going to be good at it is all I want. So make sure training is good for the community. I mean, with her background in that, I'm assuming that she should be well-versed in open meetings, open records stuff as a municipal attorney. I mean, I don't know if I'm asking the right person, but she's qualified for this?
Well, yes.
And then I'm inclined to leave it as it is then for, the mayor's got a good point that the assembly does turn over, but I think it's great for all assembly members to be able to put a face with the borough attorney in case they actually need something from him or her. I always enjoyed it when Jim Brennan came to visit, just so I could know who I was dealing with on an issue. And if she is qualified to give that presentation, I'd be inclined just to leave it as is. That's all.
Any other discussion? Member Castro?
Yeah, being as this is a serious concern, we don't want to have any open records or open meetings, and I think that the assembly has questions concerning that, and I feel that it would benefit the borough most if we, or the assembly, if we were to jump on this and do it as soon as possible. While I would like to be able to meet Attorney Heidemann, I feel that that we would be better off if we just learned the details regarding open meetings, and so we can not go through any sort of issues like we've had in the past. And it would be my vote to be able to try to do this as soon as we could.
Member Mucci.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I agree with Assemblymember Castro. It's just too bad they can't put together some type of PowerPoint presentation that just lays it out for us to kind of go through and read it, as opposed to, I mean, yeah, it'd be great to meet the city attorney or borough attorney, but that's not my number one concern regarding that issue. There should be a way we could go on and get a PowerPoint presentation, or have the attorney put together a list of scenarios about what does fit and what doesn't fit. I mean, that should be able to be done. I mean, I don't think it's that hard. I mean, I'm not going to do it, but I think somebody who was versed in it could do it. I mean, that's the suggestion I have.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Yeah, I'm getting tired.
It's all good.
Dan Gregor.
Yeah, because the flip side of the same coin is I definitely agree with what Member Mucci is saying right there is, I'd be just fine with the PowerPoint as well, going over the nuts and bolts of something like this. And when I see fall of 2019, I think that strikes me 18 months down the line seems counterproductive since this has been a pressing issue here lately.
Through the mayor.
Yes, it does say 2019, doesn't it?
Would have been 2018. Just in defense of myself and staff, we're responding to your direction to schedule training. So clearly we can do whatever the assembly would like. We could ask either of these people to, I believe the one gentleman actually does give a presentation. I have a feeling he doesn't really want to send it because this is how he makes his money. And so, they've never asked for that if you'd be willing to put something together. So, again, we're responding to the wishes of the Assembly telling us to schedule this class. We can do it at whatever time and with whoever the Assembly would like us to do it with.
In defense of Mr. Gotti on that, he did mention, talk to Betty Svensson at Southeast Conference and get the most recent from November of 2017 presentation. And so that would be a start to get the presentation, and it's just like out of a book. It's kind of like a PowerPoint, but it's on paper. I guess we could compile questions and then get answers for whatever we aren't clear on from that. Member Mucci?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, I have no problem leaving it in as that line item for that. And I don't know if this is the time to ask for or give direction to the city manager to get this presentation from Southeast Conference or whoever, so we could at least have a chance to look at it between now and if we think we need to do this in fall of 19. This is not saying that we have to spend X amount of money to do it, but it at least gets us past the question of the open meeting acts, and it would give me a little bit more understanding of the whole issue.
And maybe we should change the timing from fall of 19 to 18. But
Yes, definitely. That was an error on my part. It's that FY19 thing.
Fiscal year, yeah.
But, so just to clarify too, the reason it's on here is that it's budget time, so we're planning for the next budget that starts July 1st. So that's also a reason that it was fall of 2018 in my mind, was we haven't budgeted for this training. If we do anything prior to the next budget year, we're going to have to find the funds to do it and transfer money, do a supplemental budget, because you guys are out of travel money pretty much.
Member Stanton Gregor?
In that case, then I would move to approve it as is, because at least then we have money budgeted for it in case the Assembly wants to take that direction. I can live within that form, I guess.
If you look above the Open Meetings Act dialogue there's the reason my head's turning because I can't figure out how to get the page to go up right on my iPad. 2, to go to AML newly elected officials, which you'd get the same kind of training, and then the mayor generally goes to that. That's budgeted as well. One thing I would ask that we add, and probably, I assume it, I don't assume anything, but if we got called to go back to Washington, D.C. to testify for either the Coast Guard, and I'm not saying we need to make a trip to Washington, D.C. this year. I think the last one we did a month or so ago was very beneficial. I'm not so sure we shouldn't have it budgeted for $4,000 to go to Washington, D.C., but I'm not planning. I don't think there's anybody planning a trip back. Just to have it budgeted, but we can always do a supplemental, or if we don't use the $5,800 to do the training, we could probably change what it's for and do that. So I was just going to throw that out there. So otherwise, I'd vote for this just like it is. Any other discussion? Nancy, did you have a comment?
I'm inclined to vote for it like it is, and if we start putting $4,000 extra in for a trip to Washington, it's real easy to say, oh, we've got it budgeted, let's go.
Wow.
So I think we're probably better off leaving that trip out, and if we need to, we can use the supplemental budget.
Okay, any other discussion? Clerk, call the roll.
Mark?
Yes.
Jay?
Yes.
Nancy?
Yes.
Jeff?
Yes.
Eric?
Yes.
Kurt?
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, the mayor and assembly travel and training budget passes unanimously. Next item on the agenda is item E, Island Ventures LLC Scow Bay Tidelands lease application. I would entertain a motion to approve this lease application.
So moved.
Second.
Motion been made by Member Mucci, seconded by Member Stanton Greger to approve this lease agreement for Mr. Murgis to build a ramp at Scow Bay. Any discussion?
Mr. Mayor.
Member Mucci.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just want to thank John for being very patient through this whole process. It's been quite the ordeal between special use permit and getting to drive this thing out there, and it's I'm just glad we're going forward with it so that you don't have to spend too many of your sunny days in here. And thank you for your patience.
Member Stanton Greger.
Just to echo Member Mucci's statement even more pointedly today, thank you for sitting through the meeting on this. This has been clearly vetted, and I wish you success in your new venture.
Any other discussion? Clerk, call the roll.
Jeff?
Yes.
Mark?
Yes.
Nancy?
Yes.
Eric?
Yes.
Kurt?
Yes.
Jay?
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, is there any communications?
I just had a couple, Mr. Mayor.
These were the two items you wanted to add,
Yes.
were under communications?
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you. I'll give Debbie this minutes that I have for the Petersburg Borough Hazard Mitigation Plan. We met last Thursday, and everybody gave their input. So the state's going to review it in March 5th, and then FEMA gets to look at it, and then it comes back to the Assembly in May to adopt the new emergency management. So I'll give this to Debbie, and she can pass it on.
I've got a question on that topic,
Yeah.
Member Mucci, if I may. Was there any discussion in the cleanup that just took place over in Wrangell?
Not, yeah, maybe Sandy can.
Okay.
We didn't discuss.
Well, it was kind of a big thing for Wrangell, that there's a contaminated site that cost, I don't know the figure, but I think it was over $1 million. But anyway, just curious. All right.
And then, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I have this one, we'll do the recognition list. But we all got an email the other day from the city manager, and I wanted to take the time to read it because it's a little disturbing to me, and I want to make sure that the public understands, all these emails are public anyway, and I just wanted to read it, and I want to get Steve's response, and I don't know if he can respond, but I just wanted to make sure that the community knows what's going on.
Has this, go ahead. I don't know if it's, I don't know how to word it. Does this have something to do with the reprimand?
It has something to do with petitions that were being signed over the week.
Yeah, if you'd like to read it. But I don't know if it's still something that's not.
Well, I haven't, Mr. Mayor.
Just an accusation.
Sure.
But if you want to, Steve's back, you could, he's the one you're going to.
Sure. Mr. Mayor. Mr. Mayor.
Yes.
So is there a problem with me reading this email that you sent us on Friday regarding employees passing out a petition on borough time and borough vehicles?
I don't believe I left any names in there, so yes, you can.
Okay. Mr. Mayor?
Yeah.
So I'll read it. This was sent to the Assembly member on Friday, sent to me on Friday, or the Assembly on Friday, and it says, from Steve, I've been made aware today that a petition is being circulated regarding the proposed reorganization. This is clearly the right of persons involved. However, it has been reported that 3 members of the Power and Light Department were either soliciting signatures or distributing the petition during work hours using borough equipment. This is not allowed. The use of borough time and equipment to advance a political issue is not allowed and will result in severe discipline when we fully determine the employees involved. I think it is safe to say no department head or assembly member would be encouraging any of these employees to violate this policy, but I felt it was worth reminding everyone. Thank you, Steve. And there's an attachment regarding pertinent sections of the Petersburg Municipal Employee Policy Manual.
Okay, any other communications? Move to assembly discussion items. Is there any recognitions?
I have one, Mr. Mayor.
Member Mucci.
So Thursday morning at 8:30 a.m. up at KFSK, they're going to have like a kind of a celebration for Whoopi Davidson. She's been driving buses for 30 years or 33 years and teaching kids how to drive in the community, and it's just a way of saying thank you from KFSK. We all enjoy listening to Whoopi on the radio in the morning. She always has some jewel for us to get, but I just thought I'd throw that out to the community, so if you're out and about up at KFSK at 8:30, they're going to have a cake and some coffee. That's it.
That is Friday, Member Mucci?
Thursday.
Thursday. Thank
At
you
what
for-
time?
8:30 a.m.
She isn't retiring, is she?
No.
Oh, good.
Just a party. Just a party.
Okay, any other recognitions? Okay, moving on to item B, communication from the public. Member Mucci asked for this to be on the agenda today, so Member Mucci?
Sure, thank you, Mr. Mayor. You've kind of addressed it already, but we get lots of letters from the community, and it's just, I think it's important that, we all live in this small town. We might not all agree on everything, but if there's a way to keep the communication somewhat polite and not personal, I understand people they feel passionate about certain issues around the town, and it doesn't do anybody any good to call people names, question their integrity. I honestly feel that all the rest of us on the Assembly are trying to do what's best for the community. That's my stand, and I just hope that if members of the community are, emailing us or sending us letters that, look like they're not very happy about stuff, I understand that, but I think they need to have at least a little bit of politeness to their letters to the Assembly members. I just wanted to bring that up.
Yeah, okay. Any comments on this? We did kind of go through it with the public testimony today, and the clerk addressed it, and we talked about it earlier, and I don't know how you edit something that comes from somebody and not get their, I guess you could edit it and still get their point across, but then it's not really their words, so I don't know how we would address that, but I think we tried to do our best today to curb that. So, Member Stanton-Greger?
Yeah, I would add one thing that Member Mucci said, and the term that comes to my mind is civility. We expect that from people who come to testify before us. We ask to be civil, not through accusations or name-calling, personal attacks. I think, simply put, we should be asking the same level of civility from letters submitted. I think it's fair that way.
So maybe I'd like to back up a little bit, not too far, just borough discussion items. I took horrible notes at the last meeting, but if I understand my scribbling here on my calendar, it didn't look like we were going to have a quorum for the March 19th meeting, Clerk. Is that the case?
Correct.
So the next meeting will then be the first part of April, the 2nd, I believe. That's what it's...
I think that's correct.
That's the first Monday.
That's what I had written down, too.
Yeah, and I think Member Mucci will possibly be gone, chasing Herring around for a different endeavor than me, but I'll be doing the same thing. So, and you'll be gone?
On the
April?
2nd?
2nd of April?
No, I'll be here.
Okay, I'm just trying to get a heads up for the clerk to know if we have a quorum, who's going to be here, because I was under the assumption from the last meeting that Member Walter was going to be here today, but then he was calling in, which is, I'm glad he had the opportunity to call in. But it's just nice for people to know ahead of time. Member Strand, you had a comment?
Yeah, I'll be here April 2nd, but I won't be here April 3rd, so we can't be changing the meeting date beyond that day. I've arranged my travel for that week around the meeting on the 2nd and the training on the 9th. I'll be here for both of them, unless somebody decides to change them.
Member Mucci.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, there's a better chance I'll be here on the 19th than the 2nd, but regardless of where I am, I should be able to call unless I'm somewhere off. Somewhere off the ocean.
I know how that works on the boat, yeah. So anyway, with that being said, if there's no other communication from the public or any discussion items, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Okay, all those in favor say aye. Aye. All right, we're adjourned at 1:59.